Right now we're going to call to the stage Michael Maracle, law scholar, very interesting fellow. Got a story to tell when he finishes talking. But right now, please welcome Mike Maracle.
Thank you. I'd like to maybe pick up where Rob left off. Not part about me. About your contracts. Basically, if you sign a contract and you don't put without prejudice in there, you're not going to have any recourse. It's called an unconditional contract. An unconditional contract only favors one part, and you don't want that to happen. So you use with prejudice above the signature so that you have recourse. And it doesn't have to be under the UCC. It can help. If you're going to use the UCC, you're going to use UCC 1-207/308. And that'll give you recourse. And that will tell them that you are not going to be liable for any contracts that you weren't fully informed with, because they do use adhesion contracts now. Okay. Ron Paul's on the way?
That's right.
We apologize for not having a Ron Paul sticker up here, at least. And we are a law group, but I'd also like to bring up the fact that as a group, we try and be prepared. So I'm suggesting that everybody that does not have a food supply, they should start, better late than never, to start storing foods. Any kind of foods, anything that will store. Canned foods, Mountain House will store for 20 years. I go to a place called AAOB, and they sell you stuff in bulk. 5 pound or 5 gallon and 6 gallon super pails of all kinds of food, all kinds of supplies you're going to need in the future.
Afterwards, I have a lot of information on it too. We
Good.
can go to that for quite a while.
Good, bring it right up, because it's important. And you know how important it is to them.
Absolutely. Ammunition and gold and food.
There you go. The Second Amendment makes all other all other rights possible.
That's right.
So
Don't become dangerous.
that's right. And store as much ammunition or as many guns as you can possibly have, because they want your guns. I can do a little explaining about the guns too. And I'll start with sovereignty, something that everybody is born with. You're born sovereign, that doesn't change, but you're allowed to contract your rights away. That's something that the government can't interfere with. So never sign an unconscionable contract. It's one-sided. The driver's license is one-sided. The marriage license is through the state itself. It's a three-way contract that the state has control over. The state is the only one that can change that contract. You can't change it. As much as I love my wife, I've only been married my second time around for about 5 years. And when I told her I wanted a divorce, she wasn't very happy. So I said, it's not you I want a divorce, it's the state. So I'm working on that. That's all part of my research. When you do get married and use a state license, you are allowing the state 1/3 of everything that comes out of that marriage. That's why you're paying what you got. The state wants its third. So you better fess up. I don't want to give a third of the state. And New York State, where we live, is a state that doesn't recognize common law, well, because there's no money in it. So the state wants their share. And you know, for people that have same-sex marriages, we're just asking for more headaches. The state's going to get their hooks into that marriage also. So that's really the reason that it passed. Really, it's not equal rights. It's none of that stuff. They just want the money. Plain and simple. It's all about the money. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, I'm the type of person that I like to roll with questions. If you want to talk about the church, you were interested in the church.
Yeah, I read something that the UCC was outside of the church, the Vatican get percentage of UCC. It's universal commercial code. Churches get percentage on all trade somehow.
Trade?
Yeah, that's what I've read.
I don't know anything about that.
And trade and commerce across countries.
For the church?
Yeah, the Vatican.
Well, one thing I can tell you about the church, or most churches today, they're 501c3, which means they're registered for profit. And when you register with the state, you have to abide by state rules. I was raised Catholic, and the Catholic Church is a 501c3. And the state tells them what they can talk about in church. You'll never hear about anything political while you're in the church. It's taboo. They can't talk about the Bible in sections where it talks about homosexuality. That's taboo. They do, they lose their tax programs.
What they do?
Well, the church wants to be tax exempt. And the state can yank that from them. But the church is already tax immune. So there's a big difference between immunity and exemption. If you want immunity, that means they can't touch you for any reason at all. Why they opt not to go that way is what you got to mean. That's what I have to say about the church. Anyhow, I believe in God and all that, but it's not. I won't go to an organized church like that anymore. Just basically for that reason. And people that join the churches are members of the church. They're liable if the church goes into default. That comes out of their pocketbook because they are members of that corporation. And they'll go after the ones with the deepest pockets. You don't have to worry about me.
Hey folks, I'd like to ask everyone's help. We're trying to record this, so if you can just talk into the mic when you have a question, raise your hand, I'll come find you. Oh, I see a hand, too.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming all the way from Rochester, Syracuse area, for coming out here too. That's a nice long trip on a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the contract and without prejudice then that particular, which is C207?
UCC 1.
Okay.
Book 1. First book.
So what that says is that you're not absconding, but you're not giving away your rights.
You're reserving your rights.
Reserving my rights, okay.
Right, you want to reserve your rights because courts, they presume you to death. Everything is a presumption in their favor. You have to be a belligerent about anything that they say. You have to object to virtually everything the court brings before you.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's basically not a constant contract. I have a book that Mike sent me, and the author of it, his name is George Mercer. And the name of it, I believe I sent that to you over Skype.
Pardon?
I believe I sent that to you over
Good.
Skype at one time. Okay. It's about 700 and some odd pages. And the first 70 or 80 pages will make your eyes water. But you can go directly to any portion of the book. And it talks about the income tax, and it talks about your licenses, and it talks about where you're getting into contracts. It talks a lot about God. I mean, a lot. And if you read that, read the section that you think applies to you instead of reading the very first part, because I know if you read the first, I had to work, and I read a lot, to read the first 70 or 80 pages. And I said, I gotta read it, it's killing me. But you can jump and go to anything you want. I have the book on my computer. It wants to work. And it also gives you Supreme Court cases, over 200 of them, which helps out a lot, and I downloaded every single one of them. So if anybody's interested in anything, I've got it. Just contact me through the group, and I'll be thrilled to help anybody out. Okay, it talks about bank accounts, and that is a link to the federal government. It talks about federal licensing programs, injury in fact and causation, insurance programs. Now, they want you to have insurance because that puts you into a maritime jurisdiction. All insurance policies, every one of them, is maritime. And that comes from an 1890-something Supreme Court case. So you don't want to be in a jurisdiction. It does talk about the IRS, Social Security, and a citizenship contract. There's also a residency contract in there. So a lot of information, and you really have to find it somewhere and download it. I'm sure it's online. As a matter of fact, I think I ran a search on George Mercer, and it's spelled M-E-R-C-I-E-R, George Mercer. And it'll turn your life around just reading. It lays everything out so well. It's a must read. If I have to give you one document to read, that would be it. I also use a lot of information. I use Rodney Dale class, go to AIB Talk Radio. He has 3-hour shows on a couple times a week. And he doesn't charge for anything that he creates. And he's got one of the best research groups in the country.
This is Mercer.
No, Rodney Dale class, Rod class.
Rod class.
That's C-L-A-S-S. And he's on Talk Shoe. AIB County Assembly is what you're going to do the search on.
Talk shoe.
Talk Shoe. S-H-O-E. Question?
That's on the internet.
That's on the internet, yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, Mike, to continue on the topic of the UCC, what do you make of a local town justice's claim in a vehicle and traffic court that the UCC did not apply? And what recourse would I have, or would anyone have, if they refused to even recognize that?
When you're in a local traffic court, you are under administrative law. They create the rules. They should follow UCC, but it's their rules. They claim they have jurisdiction, and they get their jurisdiction actually, or they claim they do from this book right here. And this is just New York State. This is the vehicle and traffic law of New York State, which you really don't fall under. That's one of my pet peeves, traveling. And there's a lot in the book. In the beginning, you'll have definitions. And one of the major things in here is a person. And it says under section 131 in the definitions, every natural person, comma, firm, co-partnership, association, or corporation. Now, everybody here, or no, not everybody, but most people out there think that they're a natural person. And really, they are, but they're not a natural person in law. So, they use legalese to confuse you, and they do a great job. They've been doing it for since there's been automobiles on the road practically. The licenses started with just being identification, and there was no in law. So they use legalese to confuse you, and they do a great job. They've been doing it for since there's been automobiles on the road practically. The licenses started with just being identification, and there was no charge for it. And then the next time, they had expiration dates on them. And then the time after that, they charged for them. So the camel's nose gets into the tent, and they keep going and going and rolling. And here's what you end up with today: enhanced driver's license, which today are optional, but I can't tell you that they're not going to be optional tomorrow. They'll probably be mandatory. Just enough people are fighting and they don't want chips, and that's what they are. Let's see, I want to give you a couple definitions here. I don't know, Jeff, I didn't forget about you. I just want to go back to some of these definitions. One funny thing I came across in here, which kind of opened up the book to let you know that this book is written entirely for people that are going to be in commerce. All of this comes down from USC Title 49, that's United States Code, and CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, Title 49, same thing. And it all has to do with commerce, because that's all Congress has authority to control. They have no control over you as an individual person, or we the people. And one thing I found in here was registering a motorcycle. And it's the only place I really found it, but they're asking for your business address to register your motorcycle. And I don't know what made me look in there, but I found it. I spent a lot of time going through this book. Some words of interest, one of them will be a motor vehicle, because they always claim you're driving a motor vehicle. And it's possible you are if you're in commerce. Now, one thing I have to say about a motor vehicle is it's a vehicle first. A motor vehicle has a very narrow definition. I mean, it's very narrow, and you have to be in commerce, where a vehicle can be anything. A vehicle can be a wheelchair, a skateboard, roller skates, a bicycle. These are all vehicles. So your car is a vehicle until you use it in commerce. Then it changes to a motor vehicle. It's almost like a kitchen knife. It's just a kitchen knife until somebody gets stabbed and killed with it. Then it turns into a murder weapon. The vehicle is the same thing. It's a vehicle until you use it as a motor vehicle. Yes, sir.
If going to and from work, is that considered commerce?
That's traveling. Are you doing something? Are you accepting money? Are you carpooling? If you're carpooling, you're in commerce.
Oh, okay. All right. So the big definition. Okay.
So there has to be an exchange of money or goods, some kind of trade to put you in commerce. But you're going back and forth to work. No. You can carry your own goods with you wherever you want. As long as for your own personal use, you have the right of the highways. And the highways are not just the highways, they're rights of way for everyone. Question?
I'm just a little absurdity I wanted to throw in here. While I was doing my graduate work, we studied bicycles extensively for walkable communities. And we found out that in New York State, they don't want you to know this, the bicycle contingent, the people who own bicycle paths. But in New York State, the minute you enter into the street with a bicycle, any size diameter tire, you're under the vehicle traffic law, they claim. So when you come off the sidewalk and you go into the street to cross the street, or the people that choose to drive their bicycles in the street, they must obey vehicle and traffic law. Under New York State law, it's up to the individual cities or villages to determine whether or not they can ban bicycles from sidewalks. Those that choose to, they don't determine whether the ban applies to the appropriate sized bicycle. Now I say that to say this. Originally, the intent of this legislation was to allow the individual villages to determine whether or not bicycles had to not be on sidewalks in business districts. They could determine that by the size of the bike. It took a lot of research to find this out, but a 20-inch bicycle is usually ridden by a child. You don't want a child in the carriageway, you want a child on the sidewalk. So a village would say, 26-inch tires can't be in this business district. In the village of Williamsville on Main Street on the sidewalk, we want them in the street. But 20-inch tires, they're not banned from the sidewalk. Maybe this is too far aside, but I thought it was important for people to know that even bicycles, once they enter the carriageway and they're crossing the street or they're in the street, under New York State law are required to comply with vehicle and traffic laws.
Where do you find that law? Basically, it sounds like an ordinance to me, a town ordinance.
It's a state law that the cities are in control of the ordinances. They delegate whether or not the city or the village can ban bicycle traffic from the sidewalk to the smaller government entity. It's a state law that delegates it to them. Not many do it at all.
But it is an ordinance.
Yeah, it'd be a local ordinance.
It's also color of law, which that would make it administrative. And I've just luckily finished up in administrative court. I'm studying to be a paralegal, and you don't believe the stuff that they spoon feed you when you're learning. It's the same thing they're giving to the lawyers. It's what they want you to know, but it's not what's true. So they believe it and they teach it, and they think they're teaching you the right thing, but they're not. But an administrative court, you can only be a plaintiff. You don't go to administrative court to be judged. You go to administrative court to complain or file a charge against somebody in the administration. There's no other reason to be there. And if you go to administrative court, you can take the people in the court to another administrative court. Because the one you usually go to won't even admit it's an administrative court. Your vehicle and traffic laws, the Bureau, Department of Motor Vehicles, agency, they're all administrative, every one of them. State Police, administrative. Buffalo Police, administrative. They're all under administrative law. So when you go to court, you're under administrative law. Now, I just did a roundy round with a judge out in Wheatfield, and I tried to get her to tell me what the jurisdiction was, and of course, she wouldn't tell me. And what I did is I said that this is an administrative court, and she says, no, it's not. And she might have been right, because the judges switch hats while you're in court, and they don't tell you when they do it. They'll bring you in on a criminal charge for a violation, am I correct? And then they'll tell you it's civil, and then administrative. Your first appearance is administrative, and that's when you go talk to the prosecutor for a plea. That's your only administrative chance. So you should have paperwork filed when you go in for that ticket. There should be something in there. And if you want to know what you're truly in, ask what the burden of proof is. If it's beyond a reasonable doubt, it's criminal. Okay? So, when you go to administrative, that's not it. All they're going to operate on is preponderance of evidence, and that's 51% proof. And they're going to open up your folder and look inside that folder, and they're going to see a traffic ticket or a summons. That's the only thing in there, and that's a preponderance of evidence. It's prima facie, and they presume, like I told you before, they presume everything that is not favorable to you. That's their MO. So I talked to the judge a little more. She was very nice. She did answer a lot of my questions. And I asked what kind of court it was. And she told me that, as a matter of fact, the judge should not really be talking to you. It is the prosecutor. The prosecutor should be answering all your questions. It's the prosecutor that should be giving you the jurisdiction, proving the jurisdiction. And the police officer should file a valid cause of action. And they don't do that. You don't know the nature and cause of the charges, and all they will tell you about is the cause. You don't know what not wearing a seatbelt means, or you don't know what going 55 and a 45 means. Like you're stupid, but you're not. You just don't know any better. So when they ask you if you understand the charges, 99% of the people or more are going to say yes, when they don't understand the nature of the charges. Where are they getting the jurisdiction from? And they're getting it from Title 49. And that's transportation code. And if they want to yank your license, the courts really can't do that either. That's supposed to be done through the Department of Transportation. And they juggle their jurisdiction around between the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of Transportation, and you don't know where they're coming from. They really do make an effort to make it as difficult as possible for you to get any kind of relief. And if you can't get relief, you're not getting a fair trial, if it's even a trial. I think most things are foregone. And the officers pretty much will tell you that they're in law enforcement, and law enforcement is not what you want. You're looking for a peace officer, because a peace officer is what was the original intent for the police force. And law enforcement is just another word for revenue enhancement. Now, you can get a lot of information by going to Rodney Class's site. He has, about 3 years of archives, and I have every single one of them. And you can watch them start from the beginning like I did when I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to interpret law. I didn't know any of the legalese. And he teaches you how to look up words, what they mean, where to find bills, and anything you need in Congress. The legislative intent is very important. To find legislative intent will tell you what they meant instead of depending on the court's interpretation of it. Because the court's interpretation is usually pretty lopsided. So I don't even know if I got to your answer yet. I got off on the administrative kick, I apologize.
So was the judge correct then in saying that he's not obligated to follow UCC and the recourse provisions within it?
You would have to read New York State's administrative law, and you'll find that under NYCRR. I want to say it's Title 15, and where exactly it is, I don't know. But I know that you can you can counsel anybody. But they have to follow the administrative code from 1946, which is what the federal government put in place. So if you want to get to the genesis of the code, go to the UCC or go to the CFR and look under administrative law. Should be under Title 18 or 28. And that'll give you where you need to go to start. The genesis of the code, go to the UCC or go to the CFR and look under administrative law. Should be under Title 18 or 28. And that'll give you where you need to go to start. The rules are there. The rules of court are there. Everything that they're supposed to do. And every courtroom I've ever been in, they've never done it. So never try and fight something on the merits. You'll never win on merits, ever. You always want to fight them on procedure. That's going to win cases for you, because they're not following procedure. And you have to learn to put the right paperwork in. There's a course called jurisdictionary everybody should look into. And I believe Mike wants to actually start a jurisdictionary club. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be
So,
speaking on that.
it's about $250 to buy it, and I took the time to transfer all the videos that you can only get online. I put them on a hard disk. You don't have to be online if anybody's interested. You can go through a lot of that, because a lot of people don't have a fast internet. We'll Any more questions from anybody?
Yeah, Mike, can you go through the procedure, let's say for traffic court, from the filing of paperwork to talking to the prosecutor, going in before the administrator, judge, whatever you want to call him, how that typically goes in the appeals process that follows?
I can, that's pretty tall order. To start with, you are in an administrative court and you're actually in the wrong administrative court when you're in a municipal court. It really should be before a full-fledged administrative judge, not just a local judge. They don't have the authority. They say, I think it's 2B, section 2B of the vehicle and traffic law gives them authority, but they don't really have it. Yeah, you can use the 11th Amendment immunity. It's the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act would help you out. The state can't bring charges against a citizen under the 11th Amendment. It was stripped away from them in 1792. And the courts keep right on going on, even though that privilege was stripped away from them. So we really only have one Supreme Court, and there is no other court. I say we, I say under the Constitution. But if you're going to fight it out in the court, my last ticket, I threatened to do a cross-claim, and the prosecutor didn't want anything to do with that. So it's standing up for your rights. You have to object to most everything they say. And you should learn your objections. You should learn about motions. All the procedures are here. I'll give you a fast rundown of what to look forward to. I probably should have brought this in. Excuse me, I'm a one-finger typer. That's probably why I spend so much time on the computer. Okay. I have the 1946 Administrative Act on my computer. Anybody has a flash drive or anything they want to move to. I love Skype because you can send big files over. My Skype name is not legal, and it's spelled K-N-O-T. L-E-G-A-L. There we go. Okay, they go by rules, and they don't have a rule 1 here, other than you shouldn't be there. And rule 2 covers your notice of appeal. And Rule 3 covers your docketing of appeals. Rule 4, preparation, contents, organization, forwarding, and status of the appeal file. Service of documents is Rule 5. Computation and extension of time limits is Rule 6. Motions are Rule 7. Appellants, election of procedures, which means you can pretty much pick the venue if you know how to use common law. Rule 8. That was the election of appeals. And Rule 9 is small claims. It's an expedited procedure rule. And Rule 10 is the accelerated procedure rule. Rule 11 is your submission of appeal without a hearing rule. And you certainly don't want that. You always want a hearing because it costs them money. 12 is a regular procedure rule, and that's where you normally get a Rule 12b-6, which means that you ask for something that relief can't be granted. You're there, but you didn't ask for a remedy. So they'll give you a Rule B-6 that says, you didn't ask for anything, you're just fighting. So always ask for a remedy, no matter what it is. Question? No? Okay. Always ask for a remedy. Whether it's injunctive, which means it's not for profit, you're not doing it to make money, but you're getting them to stop something. Stop writing me tickets, stop this, stop that. That's what injunctive relief is. And that's what, I don't know if you know of private attorney generals, something created in the 60s during the Civil Rights Action. The government found that people would not fight for other people. So anybody can be a private attorney general. One of the rules is no money is involved. You cannot be reimbursed in any way, shape, or form. You have to fight them for injunctive relief only, and that is no money awards at all. So it's a great way to fight because it carries a lot more weight than saying, well, I'm going to sue you, or for my remedy, I want $1,050 gold coins, you know, an outrageous amount of money. The more outrageous it is, the less likely you're going to succeed. So if you keep it practical enough to ding them, the chances are it's going to work in your favor. Pleadings are Rule 13, and amendments of pleadings or record. So you can amend them. No matter what you submit, you can there's always a chance to amend it, especially if you request it. That's Rule 14. Pre-hearing briefs. That's Rule 15. And that's usually where the pre-hearing, they'll call it pre-hearing, that's actually your administrative work, and that's the only one you're going to get. After that, they're not going to consider it administrative. And that's how they switch hats on you. So, pre-hearing conference is 16, and Court of Appeals is Rule 17, discovery and depositions are Rule 18, interrogatories, departments, admission of facts, and inspection of documents. That's Rule 19. Now, one thing I found out in the case that I was in, that the interrogatories can only be sent to parties of interest. So that lets you know, I'm working on a credit card one right now for a friend, and an interrogatory can only go to persons of interest. It's a debt collection problem that I'm working on for somebody, and they're claiming that the lawyers are claiming that they're working for the bank, but they're debt collectors. So if I send an interrogatory in, the bank has to answer it. They don't answer it. In other words, the party of interest that they claim to represent are the ones that I can go after. And if they say, no, it's not going to work like that, then I know that it's just a scam, like most collection agencies have. That's for another day. That's a long-winded project right there. Trust me. Okay. 20. Time and place of hearing rule. Notice of hearing is Rule 21. And unexcused absence of a party is Rule 22. Nature of the hearing, Rule 23. Subpoenas, which you should get. Always subpoena if you can. Even if it's the person that wrote out your parking ticket, you have the right to face your accuser. And they don't like to bring him in.
I have to, having received a half a dozen because of alternate side of the street parking in the city. Having received a half a dozen tickets for alternate side of the street parking in front of the houses we have in the city of Buffalo. We finally challenged one for a house guest at our home, and we went to what's called a parking authority.
Buffalo?
Yeah, there's one in New York City, there's one in Rochester, I think. Maybe Albany, maybe it's not Rochester.
They have to have a certain population to have their own bureau.
Yeah, there are 3 parking authorities in the state.
Yep.
We went in, and I was there to testify that his automobile was not blocking the pedestrian right-of-way. And whoever it was there that day said, well, I don't take testimony. Do you have any pictures? And I said, well, we called and we tried to secure the identity of the person who wrote the ticket. Because in Buffalo, they're not required to sign the ticket.
They give you a badge number.
They give you a number. It's not even a badge number, they say. It's just an ID number. And I said, well, then I don't get to face the accusers. And they said, no, you're right. We're not going to bring in whoever it was that wrote the ticket. And I said, well, then how do I challenge the veracity of his eyesight? if you won't let me through discovery to subpoena the cameras that you claim are in these vehicles, how am I going to show you that there's no evidence to support this and that my testimony, and the guy who owns the car is here to testify also, outweigh anything that you've got, because he wasn't a driver. Anyway, that bugged me. And so I talked and asked, and finally I found out the reason in Buffalo that they use those numbers is that they were issuing parking tickets to policemen down at the square in downtown Buffalo. And the policemen were calling them up and harassing the meter maids at 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning. I've always wanted to know, under their own rules, how legal is this? How can you even conduct an administrative hearing in a parking authority in a city the size of Buffalo and just issue ticket after ticket after ticket after ticket and not tell anybody who these people are who are writing the tickets, or allow me even to call them in so I can say, when was the last time your eyes were examined?
You can, but you can't do it on the date that they give you to show up. You can't subpoena them. The law judge can do that. And they're terrible law judges. A lot of them are bar cards, and believe it or not, they're not employees of the city. They're independent contractors.
Yeah, the authorities are independent, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I've done a couple roundy rounds downtown, and until they were all over, my research wasn't done. Now, I wanted to know where they got their authority from, and they're saying the legislature. Fine, I agree with that. And then I went a little further. It has to be given to somebody else. And here's the trick. In their rules, go to the city charter of Buffalo. Go to the common council. That's where they get their authority from. But their authority is only for commercial vehicles and public automobiles.
Taxis?
Taxis, limos, vans, all for hire. Handicap vans, your car, no. But you're there, once again, because they presume that you're in commerce. And the reason they can do that, you have a New York State registration, a New York State inspection, and a New York State plate. And your automobile is registered as a passenger vehicle.
Public automobile.
No, it's a private, you're using it in a private way. It's actually your private automobile, because you're not using it in commerce, you're not using it for hire. And that's where they got you. And it's registered as a passenger vehicle.
Public automobile.
No, it's a private, you're using it in a private way. It's actually your private automobile, because you're not using it in commerce, you're not using it for hire. And that's where they got you. And believe me, I only found 3 cases that talked about public automobiles. And I don't have a public automobile, I have a private automobile. And that's where their authority ends. And the next ticket that I have to fight, I'm going in with that.
Okay, so those 3 cases, you think they define what a public automobile
They
is?
did define it.
All right, okay.
They did define it.
So
It came under insurance cases. There's nothing out there in the public that would describe it other than all 3 of them were insurance company cases.
thank you.
So now you got something to at least fight with. And the red light camera is the same thing. They're going to get rid of them because you can't face your accuser. They're going to be gone. It's a waste of money. Total waste.
I have a question that's kind of more of a statement. Maybe you could speak on it a little bit, because you just touched on something that I cover extensively in my book about private property ownership versus public property ownership. Is public property not property that every individual in America has a right to exist upon and use? whereas private property is exclusively the property of the owner.
You can't exist on it, per se exist. You're allowed access to it.
That's what I meant, more of access than, like, you can't sleep in a public park, but you can absolutely go there and play tennis if you want. But it's just public property that the average individual can make use of, whereas private property, you would need permission from the owner to use.
Yes, you need permission from the owner to use private property.
And that's what all of our automobiles are, is
Okay.
private.
That's what rules are though too. And I know you talked earlier about sovereignty, and I can give you a quick rundown on sovereignty. It doesn't take very much to realize that everybody's born sovereign. And I'm going to explain to you why that you are being ordered to follow their rules is because you're not acting like a sovereign. You don't act like a sovereign, they're going to presume, which they love to do, that you're not a sovereign.
And most of what they operate upon is presumption and assumption. Thank you very much.
Okay, there are maxims of law, and one of the maxims of law is you cannot be greater, the created cannot be greater than the creator. So, as God being the creator, you can never be greater because he created you. And you, as the created government. And the government that you created can never be greater than you. That you're sovereign. Now, the government came along and created 14th Amendment citizens. Now, those 14th Amendment citizens can never be more powerful than the government. And that's why they presume you're a 14th Amendment citizen. Because you cannot be more powerful than what created your status.
Makes sense.
So, if you're wondering why they're beating you up and writing all these tickets and things like that, it's because they presume you're a 14th Amendment citizen. And that 14th Amendment did not free the slave, but it brought everyone down to the slave level under the government, because the government created the 14th Amendment. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell. And don't let them presume. Always rebut everything that they tell you along that line. Because if you don't rebut it, then they're going to presume that you're yielding to what they say. Always. And if they don't answer something you say in the courtroom, then it should be presumed that you are correct because they're not rebutting it. That might answer your question, Jeff. You're making a statement and they're telling you to move on. They've just admitted liability. Any questions about the 14th Amendment? I'm not a specialist on it, but I know a little bit about a lot of things. Okay.
I'll ask a question about the 14th Amendment more for people who are going to be viewing this online and people here, but the 14th Amendment is something that was created by government. So those are really privileges that they're giving you. Those are not the rights you are born with. How would you...
That was created by
that?
corporate government.
Right.
Okay.
Not the de jure government, the de facto government.
And de jure is original, natural, organic, and de facto is actually force. It's overpowering and trying to take control.
Would you agree that one could only become a 14th Amendment citizen by their own signed voluntary consent?
No, they will presume that you're a 14th Amendment citizen right out of the box.
And if you don't refute that assumption and presumption, then they might as well just say you are one, and you might as well.
They will say you are one.
Right.
And that's where person came from. That's where this
Right.
fiction came from. So you're basically a legal fiction, and everything I read earlier about corporations, associations, and natural persons, the natural persons is part of that. I or there's something in law, one of the maxims of the law I have right here, and it's a Supreme Court case, and it aids people in understanding what it is. To aid the statutory construction which logically applies herein, no citure, and I'm butchering this up because it's Latin, and my Latin isn't what it should be. Associus, and that a word is or may be known from accompanying words. Okay? The meaning of questionable words or phrases in a statute may be ascertained by reference to the meaning of the words or phrases associated with it. So, everything associated with, I mentioned in the way of persons, was fictional. Because you can't have Rottweiler, German Shepherd, Labrador Retriever, elephant. It's not all the same thing. It doesn't belong together. So what they're doing is they're naming all things that are the same. So all kinds of fruits that are the same, all kinds of vegetables that are the same, all the same, because if they put it in this book, an elephant is some kind of dog. Plain and simple. So you know there's multiple definitions for person. I have 2 or 3 pages of definitions for person, and they just use one in here. And this is the one that counts when you're in vehicle and traffic. Let's see if I can find something else, because I really did want to touch on definitions on here. So, and most of these laws start with no person shall. So you know right off the bat you're not involved in that, because you're not a person. But they are assuming you are. They presume you are.
Or an entity or something?
A legal fiction.
Legal fiction?
Because the courts, being incorporated, and they are all incorporated, and they're all for profit, a corporation, a fictitious corporation, cannot go against a living, breathing, carbon-based human being, God's creation. So they have to create this persona for you, and they go after that. It's called a status.
Yeah. So theoretically, what you're saying to me is that even though we're carbon-based, they've decided to uncarbonize us?
Nope, they're calling you something else. They're using what they call a straw man. And straw man is in Black's Law. By the way, if you can buy a dictionary, I don't recommend Black's Law. It's almost it changes like the weather. Ever since 4th edition, it's gone completely downhill. I'll find straw man for you. Everyone thinks it's just a patriot word, but it isn't. It really doesn't exist in law. Straw man, I have Black's Law, 8th edition, page 1461. And the first definition for straw man is a fictitious person, especially one that is weak or flawed. And second is a tenuous and exaggerated counter-argument that an advocate puts forward for the sole purpose of disproving it, also termed straw man argument. Third definition, third party used in some transactions. So that's what you are in court. You're the third party used in a transaction. Let's see, the third party used in some transactions as a temporary transferee to allow the principal parties to accomplish something that is otherwise impermissible. Are you starting to grasp that?
Say that again?
Third one is one of my favorites. The third party, this is straw man, a third party used in some transactions as a temporary transferee to allow the principal parties, which is you and the court, to accomplish something that is otherwise impermissible. And what is impermissible? A fiction going after a real, live, breathing man or woman. That's impermissible. You can't do that. Fictions can only go against fictions. People
So if I'm the person that coming in, I'm the, what do you want to call it, a straw man? And I said, wait, I'm not a straw man, I'm a carbon-based human and a human being. And I rebut everything you're saying. Am I now treated as a human being, or am I still subject to the straw man thing?
They'll still treat you like that because the straw man is on your driver's license in all caps. It's on your marriage license in all
Yeah, I saw
caps.
that.
It's on your mailing address. And when they send you court papers, your name's in all caps.
Okay.
So they're telling you quite blatantly that they're going after you and you're going to transact through your straw man. And when they call you up to the bench, you're answering to the straw man's name because it sounds just exactly like yours. I hope I'm not putting you guys on overload. There's a lot of information, and I'd like to clarify as much as possible. Yes.
Which is, I think, what happened at my last court appearance. I think I did everything right up until the moment where the judge said, is there in the courtroom? And I responded to that. And I believe at that moment, I basically gave him permission to do what he did.
You did.
And now,
Explain that.
should I not have answered to that? Should I have walked out of the courtroom? Should I have refuted that? How do you handle a situation like that?
Well, for the ticket, you're only really liable to make an appearance, and you've done that. So that should be the end of your story. Jeff answered to the straw name when it was called out without clarifying that he was there to represent in that issue. Did you file the UCC one?
I did not. I simply invoked it orally. And I also tried to present my license, which I wrote it on, and he didn't want to look at that. So,
That's evidence. They don't want evidence in there. It's going to ruin their preponderance of evidence. So there's many ways that they go after you, and learning them is as tough as nails because it's an on-the-job thing. Now, I can't tell you how many, when we go down for like 2 or 3 tickets downtown, we were virtually carried out of the office. And there's just no winning. And when it comes to appeals, you're appealing to 3 judges in the administration. So they make it very difficult for you, and you have to pay for the appeal, even though all your rights have been violated. You have to pay for the transcript, another $10 here, $15 there, and you can't take it to a higher court. And in New York State, the next highest court is the Supreme Court. We're the only court that's truly backwards. Every other state, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, and ours is just another little crapball court. But it's the next step up, and that's where you're going to place your appeal. And what you're going to appeal is anything that was not done properly. They didn't follow the correct format, and in our case, they didn't let us redress our grievances at all. I mean, they just, why are you here? And people have said things like, well, it wasn't in commerce. Oh, that's not good enough. They pretty much call the rules. So you're kind of stuck when you're in administrative court because they're given quite a bit of leeway and it's tough to fight. So the only way you're going to beat it is on procedure. And like I say, you can win, I believe, by the fact that they don't have jurisdiction. And jurisdiction, that can be challenged anytime during the proceedings. Anybody can challenge jurisdiction. But when you challenge it, you have to tell them why they don't have jurisdiction. That's more research. Now, we're coming up to a hard break here, and I think we should give Mike a little time here too. I definitely spoke a lot more than I anticipated. Any last questions, any last minute questions at all? Great, I must have done a good job for my first try. All right, guys, thank you. My name is Mike Maracle, and I kind of run the law division for the free group. Notice I didn't say legal. I don't like legal. I do like lawful, and you should too.
maybe for a little show of hands here, and you don't have to pick them up, but how many people own firearms? Yeah, quite a few. Okay. Does anyone know the definition of a firearm? I believe you don't, because I'm going to ask you to raise your hand when I'm done defining a firearm. Firearm is defined under the Title 26, USC. It's a United States Code. Does anybody know what Title 26 is? IRS code. And the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, let's call it a division, is under the IRS. So the IRS controls the ATF.
Wow.
And let me give you a definition, their definition, not mine. And it's under section 5845. I love definitions. It tells you a lot. So I'm going to define a firearm for you. It's a shotgun having a barrel of less than 18 inches in length. Still have a firearm? I didn't think so. 2, a weapon made from a shotgun if such weapon as modified has an overall length of 26 inches or the barrel or barrels are less than 18 inches in length. So overall, less than 26 inches, pretty short, with a barrel less than 18 inches. That's the second one. So I don't see any hands here. If you got one, raise your hand. Number 3, a rifle having a barrel or barrel of less than 16 inches. Now that's a rifle with a barrel of less than 16 inches. I still don't see any hands. Number 4, a weapon made from a rifle if such a weapon is modified at an overall length of less than 26 inches or the barrel or barrels of less than 16 inches. So it has to be a rifle less than 26 inches overall or a barrel less than 16. Nobody yet, good. Number 5, this is where they get you when they come to write statutes. They're going to send you on a rabbit trail, so you have to look for more things. It's a pain in the neck. But number 5 is any other weapon is defined in subsection E. So we're going to get to that because I did run it down. And you're going to understand why when we get to subsection E. Number 6 is a machine gun. Now that's a gun that will fire, constantly fire. You only have to pull the trigger once. Okay, so that has that firearm. Number 7, any silencer as defined in section 921 of Title 18 United States Code. So, no silencers?
All you need is a potato.
Okay. We're going long distance shooting then. So basically, that's what a firearm is, under the ATF. So if you're really going to firearm, you should stop using the term firearm.
Is that firearm or illegal firearm? Did you forget?
No, they're defining what a firearm is. And if it's not listed there, then it's not a firearm. It's inclusive. So they're telling you what a firearm is. And you go down a little further, they'll tell you kind of like what it's not. But I'm going to go back to subsection E. Any other weapon. It's pretty vague.
Baseball bat?
Well, here's any other weapon. The term any other weapon means any weapon or device capable of being concealed on a person from which a shot can be discharged through the energy of an explosive. A pistol or revolver having a barrel with a smooth bore, which is important, designed or redesigned to fire a fixed shotgun shell. Weapons with combination shotgun rifle barrels, 12 inches or more, less than 18 inches in length. That's pretty descriptive. From which only a single discharge can be made from either a barrel without a manual. Let's put that a little more there. Smooth bore design or redesign, fix a fired shotgun shell, weapons with combinations, shotguns, rifle barrels, 12 inches or more, less than 18 inches in length, and really, that's what any other weapon is. So if it's not listed in here, it's not inclusive, it's not a firearm, and they'll charge you with firearms.
If you own firearms, then you belong to a class.
A class of persons. But you can pay $200 when you buy the firearm, and they'll leave you alone. It's a surcharge you pay to own that. That's a machine gun, and they want you to register and jump through all the hoops. So you can own a firearm. Guns are different. And this is what the ATF, this is their definition.
Welcome back to the Robert Saviola Show. My name is Eric Polanski. I'm with Mike Maracle in the studio. Mike is a paralegal with the Free Group. Now, I thought I was a pretty good person for a long time until I realized the definition by law of a person, and I don't even fit under that category. And chances are neither do you. So we're going to discuss why. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about the definition of person?
Yes. Rod Class is someone that I talked to. He's kind of my guru. And he came up with this last week for persons. But they're in all kinds of books. All statutes have the word persons. They have jurisdiction over persons. They don't have jurisdiction over people. So let me go to persons for you. And this is from Washington, D.C. statutes under vital statistics, Chapter 2, Section 7. Section 201, Paragraph 10, classifies a person, calling them a trust, as an estate, as an association, as a corporation, as a joint stock company, as an insurance company, as a district government, as agencies or instrumentalities of the district government. It doesn't say one thing about flesh and blood, man or woman.
No, they're all man-made creations.
They are. And under Title 26, what we've just been through with the IRS, they're after persons too, defines a person as a trust, as an estate. That's their definition of a person.
Or something that can be owned.
It's no matter. It's a legal fiction. It's a here. Let's go here. And you say, well, that's federal. We were talking federal. So now we're going to read something from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. Now I have a book from 2007, 2008, their book, Vehicle and Traffic. And under Section 131, the definition of person, every natural person, firm, co-partnership, association, or corporation. That's the definition you're going to get from the DMV. So you heard me say in the beginning, every natural person. And you think, hey, I'm a natural person, right? I mean, it's your natural thing. But I'm not a firm, a co-partnership. I'm not an association or a corporation, but I am a natural person. So because the word natural is in there, you think it pertains to you. Well, that's not the case. So they're describing a person as a natural person. Since when do you define a word using that word? Now, there's something called a maximum of law. In the maximum of law, it's something that's already been adjudicated so much that it's not even brought up for discussion.
Okay.
And it's something called words are known by their association. So we've done that. The natural person is also a co-partnership, a firm, an association, and a corporation. They're all legal fictions, and I'll give you an example here. An apple, a Great Dane, a Labrador Retriever, a German Shepherd, a Poodle. What are we talking about?
Dogs.
Right. So that apple has to be a dog because it's known by its association. The apple is some kind of a dog because all the words are covering one thing. And that's all they can do at one time. And that's the way they write statutes. Okay, let's do the straw man. A straw man from Black's 1, a fictitious person, especially one that is weak or flawed. The second definition is a tenuous and exaggerated counter-argument that advocates put toward the sole purpose of disproving it, also termed a straw man argument. Now the third one is the most important one that I want you to focus on. A third party used in some transaction as a temporary transferee to allow the principal parties to accomplish something that is otherwise impermissible. Let me explain to you a little bit of what that meant. A third party is used in some transactions as a temporary transferee. You're only temporary at a tribunal, which is the court. You're only there for a very short time. Now, the answer to that name, because it sounds like yours, but it's in all capital letters. All right? To allow the principal parties to accomplish something, the principal parties are who? The principal party is the prosecutor, the judge, and you. And what are they trying to accomplish? Well, they're trying to separate you from your money. And this is where it gets interesting. Why can't they just fine you and send you on your merry way without using a straw man? And here it is in a nutshell. The statutes, rules, regulations, ordinances are all set up to control persons, not people. The straw man is absolutely necessary for them to do what they're doing. I'm going to add a little color to this now. When you answer to your name in all caps, it sounds like your name. You have just become a surety for the all caps name. And it's done basically with your birth certificate. That's where it's created.
Good morning and welcome to the Robert Saviola Show. My name is Eric Polanski. I'll be with you for this week and next week. Robert is supposed to be back then. I have Mike Maracle in the studio with me. Mike is the Free Group's law executive. One time, Mike told me, he was asked, what is a sovereign citizen? And his response was, there's no such thing. You're either sovereign or you're a citizen. And that was pretty profound for me, a very defining moment in my understanding. Mike, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
We started with the sovereignty. Let's go there, and you can just, I'll shut up and you can talk.
Well, with the sovereignty, or the citizen, you forgot slave. Slave is also in there. You can be a slave or a subject. So there's a lot of names that you really don't want, and probably slave would be at the top of the list. And my idea was to be neither. A lot of people don't realize when they claim that they're U.S. citizens, they're claiming to be citizens of Washington, D.C.
As a U.S. citizen.
As a U.S. citizen. So you're a citizen of the corporation known as the federal government, which is in Washington, D.C.
That's on your passport, correct? U.S. citizen?
Even United States. They patented, copyrighted United States, U.S., Uncle Sam. There's a lot of words that they copyrighted that is used exclusively for them. If you go to Washington, they have what they call cornerstones there. And on the outside, it'll name the state facing the outside. And on the inside of the cornerstone will be United States. So the United States is only in that 10-mile square.
That's the U.S.
That's the U.S.
United States.
Yep, and that's what you're claiming citizenship.
It's a patented. Is it
copyrighted?
Copyrighted.
Yep.
Okay. Go on.
So that's why I claim that I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Because you don't live in the borders of D.C.
Well, a citizenship has allegiance to, and I have no allegiance to Washington per se.
Where is your allegiance?
Oh, to God.
Okay.
Simple as that. You know, you can only serve one master, according to the Bible.
Okay.
So, and citizen, they will kind of play with your mind, play with words. I've talked about the style manual that the government puts out. Lawyers write this. And even citizen written with a small c is pretty much the subject, slave. And the citizen that's written with a capital C only is a true freedom-loving person. One of the people, so to speak. I catch myself once in a while when I say person because that has a completely different meaning in law as it does outside.
You say that we are not a person. We are, if I'm ever in a situation and I'm addressed as a person, I correct them and I say I'm one of the people.
You are one of the people. The Constitution says we the people, not we the persons. So what the law does, what lawyers do, is they twist words so that they have a different meaning. They call it legalese, or we call it legalese, which is a second language. They go to law school to learn it, and they're very adept at it, and they very rarely admit to the things that they're doing wrong.
Well, one example you gave of illegalese, I don't know if this is exactly fitting in this topic, but 2 plus 2, does it equal 4?
Correct.
And you can look at it, or you can hear it, and you would say, yes, 2 plus 2 is 4. I learned that in first grade.
But
the words written, does TO plus TOO equal FOR?
right. So it sounds the same, just like your name sounds the same when it's written in all capital letters or it's written the proper way.
So when they say, are you Eric Polanski,
You don't know which one they're saying.
which are you referring to? Me
Right.
or this all capital letter person,
Or a
which
straw
is
man.
something that you incorporated on my behalf
Yeah, we touched on
without
that.
my consent.
Right, we touched on that in the last show. That's basically the straw man. It's in the legal dictionary. And it's a transmitting utility that they use to, well, extort money from you is about the best way I can put it. So once you learn what that means, and your straw man name is on your driver's license, it's on your utility bills, it's on any kind of debt you might incur. It's easy to track. It's on everything. I can't think of too many things when you're in commerce that name is not used.
Right.
You may be summoned to court using your correct name with the upper and lower case, but when you see the paperwork, it's not written like that. And they say that, well, we can't change that. That's just the way it's written. But of course they can change it.
So it matters if it's not in written. That's why they say a lot of times in writing. Is that true? The reason
See it
that
in
things are
writing.
in writing.
Absolutely, because you don't know. There's too many ways to change things with just speech. So writing is foolproof. Always get things in writing. It's the only way you're going to know where you stand, what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with. I recommend it very highly. And sign as few things as possible because that's where you give up your sovereignty. The more you contract with the government, the more sovereignty you lose. They take it away from you. Every little piece, a little bit at a time. Whether it's a driver's license or any kind of license for that matter, any kind of permit, they want to control you. You're asking your servants for permission to do something.
That's the 14th Amendment citizen.
That's the 14th Amendment citizen. The small
Created-
c.
It was created.
It was created right after the Civil War. And they did a lot of things that weren't really nice after the Civil War, and that's basically when the marriage licenses started, too. Now, a marriage license was unheard of before the Civil War. Everything was written in the family Bible, deaths, births, marriages, you name it. Everything went in the family Bible. And after the Civil War, they created this marriage license for the sole purpose so that a white could marry a black and a black could marry a white. That was the only reason. That was the permit. That was the license. So when you ask for a license, it's permission to do something that would be considered otherwise illegal.
And as you say, your allegiance is to God, who, according to you and me, gave you the right to marry, and who is the state to have you ask them permission, something that God gave you the ability and the right to do. Who are they to supersede God? They always try to be God.
Well, something about the marriage license that they don't tell you about is that it's created by the state. It's a three-way contract. It's between the man and a woman and the state. And God is pretty much out of the picture. So they created the contract. It's their rules. They're the only ones that can change it. And you sign away. So whatever becomes of that marriage is part theirs, and that counts for your children. And this is why CPS is out there. This is why they can get involved. They can come in and take your kids, do what they want to do, because your children from that marriage through the state belongs to the state also.
And you applied for that license.
Absolutely.
You gave them authority.
Absolutely. If you ever watch the minister, whoever gives you the vows, he watches that license or she watches that license like you can't believe. Because if they don't sign it, they can go to jail.
Well,
that's the control they have.
And that's why they take it away from you so fast, too, right?
They can't get
there
into
you go,
their
sign
hands.
it, thank you very much. Now on with the rest of your life with us. You're listening to the Robert Saviola Show. My name is Eric Polanski. I'm with Mike Maracle. We'll be back in a brief moment. Thank you. Well, welcome back to the Robert Saviola Show. I'm Eric Polanski in studio with Mike Maracle, the law executive for the Free Group. Mike, we were talking about, just before the break, we were talking about the Civil War. Would you like to continue, please?
I can. A lot changed. They started a new constitution for the federal government, and it mirrored the original constitution with a few small changes. And by doing that, they incorporated. So the federal government isn't really a government as much as it is a corporation and, believe it or not, a trust. It was founded as a religious trust of all things. I mean, that's laughable, but that's what they did. So because it is a corporation, it's a business, and everyone was crying the blues when Obama was maybe not necessarily born in Hawaii or wherever, saying he's from Kenya. Well, that really doesn't matter where he was born, because all he's going to do is be president of a corporation. That's what changed.
Amazing.
Well, to add to that, all the states, New York State, Alabama, every single state, finished incorporating under the federal government in the late 60s, 1960s. So I'm not going back to the 1860s. So the fact that they're corporations now, they don't have any sovereignty. They've given their sovereignty up. So states with the all capital states, S, capital S, T, A-T-E, they gave up their sovereignty to become a corporation. So that's why that's run like a business. All your small towns, whether it's Cheektowaga, Lancaster, Tonawanda, wherever, they're not sovereign by any stretch either, because they're all corporate. They're all listed on Dun & Bradstreet. They all have credit ratings. They all have stocks you can buy.
So it doesn't matter what the Constitution says anymore. This country was incorporated.
They presume it's incorporated. The republic is still there. They can't eliminate that. You're guaranteed a republican form of government. So it's always going to be there. None of the offices are filled. In other words, New York State is still the state that you read in all the codes with the small letters, small S-T-A-T-E. That's part of that style manual, okay? And that's what the states were according to the Constitution. So they changed all that. The republic is still there, but there's no governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, or attorney general. No offices for the state are filled.
So this corporation is masquerading as a government. Meanwhile, the true government is AWOL.
It's, yeah. What happened is it became de facto.
Or is it MIA?
It's there. It's there. It's just hidden. It can be probably brought up with enough people to do it, brought back to life as a second form of government, or actually a first form of government and non-corporate.
Okay.
So that's what you have to look forward to. I say do it. You certainly have more freedom. And the laws are truly laws. There's no statutes, rules, regulations, ordinances, millions of laws on the book, when God himself only had a little over 700 laws he had to follow. We've come a long way.
So, Mike, you've actually taken some steps to regain your identity, who you really are. You've handed in your license. What else are you doing? What have you done? Can you talk about that? We have about 5 minutes to go.
Sure. Turned in my driver license about 3 years ago now, because it's basically only for commercial activity. If you're using the roads for profit, you do need a license. When they tell you need a license to drive, you do need a license to drive. But you have to understand what drive means. Drive is a commercial activity, just like operators, like tractor-trailer operators. They're owner-operators, or they operate for somebody else. And drivers participate in commercial activities. So that's the only reason you truly need a license, to use the roads for profit. Other than that, you don't. Now, the vehicle and traffic stuff is my thing. That's what I really focus on a lot. And I don't want to get too heavy into that. I don't want a marriage license anymore. You can be married without a license, and the state recognizes it. Even the corporation recognizes it. Permits, whether it's for building or whatever, the only thing you need a building permit for, if memory serves me right, is an arsenal and a school. Other than that, you need a permit for nothing. When you buy property, you don't have to register it. Now, the county would like you to register it, but I can show you on the books where you do not have to register your property.
Okay.
Period. There's no way or shape or form that we're ever going to do that, ever. Because then you're opening yourself up to their jurisdiction. You start a business, what do? You register it as a DBA or you incorporate, and then the corporate thugs can come in, knock on your door, go through all your books, do whatever they want to do, as opposed to applying a trade. So the government cannot interfere with lawful contracts. So basically, if you want to do something, do it through a contract. You can't beat it. I'm going to start writing trusts for people.
That's the way to go. Trust.
It's truly the way to go, and I can tell you why, because the Catholic Church does it, the governments do it, everything's a trust. Your automobile is in a trust.
And they do it because it works, I suppose.
It works like a charm. And any trust that I write would be a common law trust.
What's the benefit of a trust?
It protects you. It keeps you outside statutory jurisdiction. A common law trust, a lawful trust, can't be touched by the courts.
It's similar to sovereignty.
It is sovereignty all over again. It's a contract. So, and the government can't interfere with any of those lawfully.
Yet the main thing that you tell me is where the real hooks are is the Social Security number.
That's the number one from what I've read. That's where they really get you. They will consider you to be a federal employee because you have that. And you search out their statutes and you read them, the sections of them, and if you read them enough, you're going to find out that, hey, this doesn't apply to me. You don't need your Social Security card to get a job. You don't need it. And the Social Security card is not supposed to be used for any identification under any circumstances. And, if you go to look at Title 12, which is banking, it tells you that that dollar in your pocket, that Federal Reserve note, that debt note that you carry around so proudly, is the obligation of the United States government. It's not yours. So convert it to lawful money. It's not a dollar. According to the rules, it's not a dollar. It's a debt note.
Well, folks, you heard it here. You're listening to the Robert Saviola Show. We'll be back in a moment.